what we did is we would train them, certify them. They had a job with us, but if they chose to go off on their own and do their own thing, great. You're helping people. That's all we care about. You don't have to work or welcome baby care. You can go create your own company if you want to.
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Welcome back to another episode of The Exit Whisperer. You guys, I share a never before shared story on this podcast, and I'm a little nervous about it. It's a story about after I gave birth to Seth, my youngest child, and I had people over and decided to start cooking dinner, like to host, and suddenly realized that as a brand new mother who was literally healing, I probably shouldn't be cooking and prepping dinner for everyone while everyone sat around and let me. And I threw the pan on the floor of food. So I tell that story here because I'm talking to Carey Linderman, who built an incredible business called Welcome Home Baby, which was an aftercare doula service. So in other words, we hear about night nurses and we hear about birth doulas, but this is a doula that's specifically designed to take care of the mom's needs after. Well, like it's done in so many other countries. And she built this really interesting business, came from a senior care background and sort of fell into this and then ended up selling to one of her employees when she decided that she really needed to focus in one area. She's super, super interesting. And I actually love her energy is like very calming, very, very calming. And it did bring me back to that chaotic energy when I first had that third baby. I was an experienced mother, but I lost my absolute shit when I was placed in a position to have to care for others in a moment where I really needed the care. And Carey gets that. She gets it and made a business out of it. So check this out. Here's Carey. Welcome, Carey, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Of course. I'm so happy to have another Carey with me on telling her exit journey. It's very, very exciting, although we do spell our Careys differently, but still, they're definitely a Carey energy, I feel, for us, for sure.
I know. We stick together.
Yes, exactly right. So tell me a little bit about how, first of all, I know that you built and sold this doula practice aftercare and specifically with multiples, and it's super fascinating business. And in the business of caring for moms and babies, I would love to know how you got into this.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to get into it, but you know how things happen with entrepreneurs. I was looking for new things. So I started a senior care business where I was doing in-home senior care. I had a company doing that, and my stepdaughter had a baby, and she said, "Come on over. We're coming home from the hospital." All right, yeah. Fine. And so many things started, exploding. Like, my milk's not coming in. What do I do? Should we go get bottles? I have no idea. And even though that I had, many daughters and other children, I just said, I'm here to empty your dishwasher. I'll make you a meal, wipe off your counters, but I don't want to give you any advice. And then being, my stepdaughter, I don't like to do that. I want you to figure it out. So when that was all happening, and like I say, I was in the senior care business, had senior care workers, I thought, here's an opportunity, another time, the beginning of life, bringing someone into the world, and people don't know, they don't know what's next. They don't know what to do. It's all unknown. So I thought, great business opportunity. I'll just take my senior care workers and we'll start taking care of new moms and babies. And that was an absolute disaster because they could take care of older people, but they could not do what I had wanted to do. I kind of had an idea that, like they do in Mexico or they do in other countries, when women have babies, they relax, they take care of themselves, they heal, they bond. Those are things I wanted. It's so the senior care workers were just not, filling that bill. So what I did is I started researching, came up with a doula. And yes, they're birth doulas, but they're also postpartum doulas. And they really are a servant for the mother. That's really what they do. So I started meeting some, and lo and behold, a couple walked through my door and they wanted to work for me because they love the business. And so that's how we started. Then we started taking clients.
The postpartum doula is very different from like the night nurse, right? A night nurse is about taking care of the baby. Yes.
Yes. Right.
Very, very different. This is about taking care of the mother.
It's about taking care of the mother, making sure the family bonds, because in so many cases, the mother comes home and she just sort of takes over and the dad sits by himself somewhere, just not knowing really how to get involved. So what we would do is we would make sure that dad got involved. I just remember a case where she was in her bedroom breastfeeding the baby and dad was downstairs watching TV, watching a game. And she said, I want you to come up. I want you to sit with her. I want you to be together during the feeding. Yeah, just pay attention. And those are the kinds of things that we did. We would make them meals so they didn't have to be getting takeout all the time. We made sure that there were naps being taken. We would rub her feet. We would, and just bonding the whole family together and making sure she wasn't stressed out. She wasn't running to Target, 1 week postpartum or even less. And we just took care of those things and tried to take a model of like how people in other countries do it.
It's really funny to be listening to this story and how this business came to be, because I have a story that I usually don't tell because I think it sort of paints a negative picture, I think, if I tell it, but it in the way of what's expected of women, and even within my own family. Like my husband, who is the most loving, wonderful parent and partner, I remember when I had my third baby, we had family come over and like we were going to make a meal. I think we thought and I just started like cooking, and it was kind of like the baby was like 3 days old and I had like a rush of I still remember this rush of hormones. I was making the food and then I just threw the pan. Like I threw it. And I will never forget that. Like, on what planet did he or I think that was a good idea to have people come over and that I would host? And I'm an experienced mother. That was my third child. Like and so I can imagine that there's such a need for it. How did the demand come to you naturally, or did you have to educate around demand that this was something that was needed? Because I know that.
No, it was before its time. People didn't even know it existed.
Right.
And especially, in this country, it was very foreign.
Yes. Right. Because we barely get maternity leave, let alone care, after we're born, after we give birth. So how did you create demand? How did you turn it into something that wasn't just like, oh, okay, my daughter needs this, to, a real sustainable business?
A lot of education.
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of education, a lot of speaking to groups, connecting with groups, and it took a while telling people that you're not equipped to making dinner for, a group 3 days postpartum. We went to a lot of conferences. We met with a lot of hospitals and just everything that had to do with new babies. We attended. We even on Earth Day, I think today is Earth Day, isn't it? What we did is we hosted a cloth diaper relay. It was something that was all over the world where babies, we would change everybody at the same time into cloth diapers. And we had whether people used them or not on a regular basis, it's Earth Day. So we had a lot of vendors there that we invited in, and it's all about the family, really. It's all about strengthening the family. And we educated people as to, don't think that you can just come home and do whatever. We didn't let people do that. If they said, well, I've got, 20 visitors coming throughout the day, we're like, no, are you kidding? No, we're going to, revamp this a little bit. I mean, we weren't dictators, but maybe we, tried to, say, this isn't really a good idea.
Yeah, you advocated for them for sure. So, okay, so you end up growing, and how many at its peak, how many doulas were working for you at this point, going out there in the world?
We probably, of course, I mean, we're not overrun with doulas. And what we did is I could see that if we're going to grow this business, we're going to scale this business. How many are we going to need, actually? Well, maybe quite a few. And so I had a lactation consultant. I had a NICU nurse. I had a couple of doulas. And I said, we're going to put together a course. We're going to put together a training course for women or men, but it was never men. I mean, that want to become doulas. And
wow.
So we did that. We developed a course. They went through it. It was interactive, and we certified them.
So you created a certificate. That's Modern Doula, right? Is that what you built?
Right.
Yeah. So Modern Doula became a course to certify doulas in post-birth care.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So you started with that certification course, and then so it's like you had the equivalent of the staffing firm, right? You had the doula firm that you sent out, but you also had the course.
It was my only option because they're not running around,
It's not like you could just be like, excuse me, I'm looking for an aftercare doula, and like they just exist. So you had to actually create the category, and you technically were part of creating a career.
Yes. And so there were a few postpartum doulas, and those are the ones that I hired, very few. But they couldn't do it all. And so what we did is we would train them, certify them. They had a job with us, but if they chose to go off on their own and do their own thing, great. You're helping people. That's all we care about. You don't have to work for Welcome Baby Care. You can go create your own company if you want to.
And by having the certification, you're still capturing them as part of your world, right? They could go off onto their own, but they're getting their certification through you.
Right.
Okay. How does one build a certification that becomes like an accredited or credible? Like when you were looking into that and building that out, how did you approach that to make sure that it was something that people would really value?
We created it. Because it wasn't just something that we sat around and just threw out ideas, but we had the professionals around us. We had the lactation consultants, we had the NICU nurses, we had the professional doulas that had been doing it for years. And the director, who worked it, she had been a professional postpartum doula. Gosh, I don't even know. I would say she's 20 years.
So you gather the best experts and you pull together this certification. And then how do you get people interested in the course?
A lot of advertising.
A lot of advertising. Okay. So you put
a lot of word of mouth. We told again, it was the pediatrician offices, it was the hospitals, it was, again, anybody that, your OBGYN, anybody that dealt with new mothers.
It's just amazing to me, Carey, that you I see this as you creating an entire category, like the post-birth doula. To find one, we're few and far between, and you created a system to not only recruit them, train them, and then if they wanted to go off on their own, great, or you could staff them. And so at what point do you start to think about selling this? How does that come into your mind?
Well, like I say, back, I said, I have a senior care company as well. And I did.
Yeah.
At the time. And I got really taken with this because I just loved it. I love new mothers. They're just coming into this, and no matter how, every baby's different and you are different.
Yeah.
And it was a joy. I mean, to work with new families. And we were hired by many people that had multiples. We had families with triplets. We had a lot of twins. And
that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Well, you need a lot more hands. You have more kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Many times families are out of town.
Yep.
And they can come in and help for a time, but then they leave. And, and you have things with families too. I remember this one woman saying, "Oh, I love this service. I really don't want my mother-in-law coming in and staying with me for 2 weeks. Yeah. So this is great."
Yeah. I would imagine it's a lot easier to talk about if you had an episiotomy or you having trouble with mastitis or any of that. It's a lot easier to talk with that with an aftercare doula, afterbirth doula, than it would be to talk about it with your mom. If you're not, that relationships are strained in those ways with the power dynamic and all of it. And it just, to me, it makes total sense. Okay. So I get it. So you have this senior business, you fall in love with this business, and you're high over indexing on multiples. It's exciting. And then what happens?
Well, what happened is I felt like I needed, your business, you go to different levels.
Yes.
And when you go to different levels, it's great. Okay. So we have lots of clients and we're going to a new level here. It's not that easy.
Right.
You have to be prepared for it. You'll fall back and you may end up going out of business. You may be getting tons of business, but if you're not prepared and you're not set up for that business, it's not going to work. So what I realized is we were growing. I'm handling a lot of this on my own. I have great people. But it's, again, as the owner, I'm kind of alone up there. And I ran into a friend of mine, and he had been in a networking group. I happened to go sub at the group, and he said, "Oh, I just sold my business." And I said, and he's great numbers guy. Just new numbers inside and out, and just really good businessman. And I said, "Well, would you like to have lunch?" I said, do you have anything in the works right now? And he said, "Well, no, not yet. I'm just kind of figuring it out. I've got some offers." I said, "Let's go have lunch." And I asked him to do some consulting with us. And so he started that, and then ended up being a 50-50 owner of both companies.
Wow.
And realized, his expertise told him that I was just juggling way too many balls.
Yep.
So then he said, pick one, because it's, this is too much. We need to restructure here a little bit. So then that's when I thought, I'm going to go with the senior care. and which is what we decided to do. And I was part of a women's presidents organization, and I thought,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out to them
Yeah.
because they're always buying businesses and they know
That's
about
right.
what they want to acquire. And I first said to my operations manager, who you would have thought she owned the business. She loved it so much that it was like hers. And which is a good thing. You
Yes,
want
it is.
that's working for you to be passionate. I said, this is what's happening. I said, would you like me to throw it out there? Or she said, no, I want to buy it. I want to try my hardest, whatever we have to do. She and her husband were going to do whatever they had to do to buy it.
And did they?
So they did.
Wow. How did you go about valuing the business? And did you structure it? Would you have structured it differently if it had not been your number two that was buying the business? Did it work advantageously or disadvantageously to you to sell to an employee?
I would say it did work in our favor in a lot of ways. It was, first of all, being taken by someone who had the knowledge. And
Right. She knows the business.
She knows the business, knew it better than
Right.
I did.
Right.
And then, just the passion she had for it and giving it her all. And that's, and then even, there was even when we sold it, there was some professional sports teams. We used to work for a lot of athletes, but there were sports teams that came to us and wanted us to do childcare at games and, for their children. And that was just beginning. And she's kind of taken and run with that business a little bit, but
Oh, wow.
a lot.
Okay.
But it's all worked out. I mean, it's still in existence. COVID took it back a little bit, but just pivoting. And we still know each other. We still work with each other. She reaches out for advice from my business partner all the time. They meet on a regular basis. So it's still thriving and still doing well.
How did you determine the actual offer price for her and come up with a way that structured terms that allowed her to buy it?
Well, my business partner is very good at figuring out. He knows the multiples and he knows the formula.
Yep.
For selling a business. He had sold 2 or 3 other businesses prior to this, so he really is familiar with not only, good numbers guy, but he was familiar with the formula for this type of business.
Okay, so he did the valuation and presented it. And then did you have to, because this is an employee and not like private equity buying this, I would imagine she would have to come up with what was needed to be able to buy it. Did you come up with like terms that made it easier for her to be able to do that? Or was she able to just get access to capital to be able to do it?
I know they remortgaged their home.
Yeah. So
which she was paid for. They remortgaged that. There was a line of credit they took. And so they pieced it all together. They made it work.
That's amazing.
Which is possible. I mean, when you're buying a business, you don't always have to say, oh, I have, 500,000 in the bank or $1 million in the bank. No. I mean, there are ways to structure things.
That's right.
And,
right.
Yeah, you put you're putting yourself on the line a bit, but if it means enough, and she felt confident that she'd be able to make it work.
That's so awesome. And it's great that it's still in existence. Do you miss that part of the business? You had talked about how, working in senior care, and then you went to space, you love the babies and the multiples. Do you miss that part?
I do, I do a little bit, but here's one good tip that I think I learned from my business partner is just don't hang on too tightly to anything.
Yeah.
Don't
get too attached to any one thing.
Too attached because businesses come and go and it doesn't define who you are.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a good bit of advice. I didn't get, you move on and put your energy where you're needed most.
That's fabulous. Fabulous. And how is the senior care stuff going?
Really well. In fact, we are working on a merger right now.
Exciting.
That wanted to buy us but we've decided to merge with them
That's
for the
great.
next couple of years, and then he's going to buy it out.
That is awesome. So you already have your exit plan ready for your next chapter.
Right.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Carey, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story. And I loved hearing about the babies and the baby care. And you're so right about that aftercare being so important.
I know. I still have a passion for it. And I worked with a company out of Australia. They were developing an app, breastfeeding app for doctors. And so, I can still kind of dip my toes in a little bit here and there.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Carey, for coming on the show.
Carey.